듀페이지 카운티 순회법원 최초의 한국계 판사로 임명된 크리스티나 카이 개수희 판사 만나보겠습니다.
Hi, I'm Judge Christina Kai. 안녕하세요. 개수희입니다. I am the first Korean American circuit judge in the state of Illinois. I grew up in Georgia. My parents moved to Georgia from Korea separately, and they met when they were in Georgia. So I grew up there. When I was 13, we moved to New Jersey, where there's a very large Korean population. I went to Cornell for undergrad and then University of Illinois for law school. I kind of just fell into law. I graduated with a degree in government, and there's not a lot you can do with a degree in government. So I went to law school to kind of broaden my options. And when I got there, I got bit by the bug. I fell in love with criminal law. I fell in love with litigating and presenting and speaking in front of a court and a jury. So being a prosecutor, I knew kind of from the beginning of law school that that's what I wanted to do with my career. So I am actually the first Korean American circuit judge in the entire state. And I was looking at the judiciary here, and there are no Koreans, there are no East Asians on the bench here in DuPage County. So when the vacancy was announced, when I had the opportunity to apply for this job, I thought, you know what, let's see if we can change that. Let's see if we can get someone who looks like me, someone who reflects the Korean community to represent the community on the bench. And I'm glad I took that opportunity. I was a prosecutor for over 15 years before I was appointed to the bench. I was in court almost every day in those 15 years. And so the experience from being a prosecutor has really helped in running my own courtroom. I did everything from traffic tickets to sex crimes to murders when I was a prosecutor. And so I think I have a deep well of experience to draw upon. I've also worked with a lot of different personalities in those last 15 years, be it with different judges, different attorneys, or different victims or witnesses of cases. And I think that comes very much in handy in handling a court call and running a courtroom. Being a judge in a courtroom, you have to kind of be the leader in that courtroom. You have to direct people and make sure everyone understands what's happening and that things occur in an orderly and judicious manner. And I think being a leader within a large national organization like the National Asian Pacific Islander Prosecutors Association has given me those leadership skills and helped me hone those skills to be able to efficiently run a courtroom as well. It's not easy being a Korean woman being a prosecutor. There are lots of stereotypes and misconceptions about what someone who looks like me should be like, should act like. And so it was very hard early on, continually being underestimated or being expected to act a certain way. But I think ultimately I had to be true to myself and kind of defeat those stereotypes and preconceptions and misconceptions by continually working hard, being a fierce advocate for the people, being a vocal litigator, and kind of breaking their ideas of what I should be and showing them just how strong and powerful a lawyer I actually am. So I think there are two primary issues facing the community when it comes to the courts. One is access to the courts. That meaning, does everyone have or come from a fair and equal playing ground? Does everyone have the same access in terms of who can afford representation, who can afford lawyers? Also, just who can appear in court? How do you get here if you don't have a car and you have to rely on public transportation? And everything from that to what if you don't speak English? What kind of access do you have the courts if you don't speak English? And what kind of accommodations can the judicial system make for the people who can not afford legal representation, have a hard time getting to court, or have a hard time communicating with the court? So making sure the courts are accessible to everyone, I think, is a big challenge that all courts face as the community, as the communities they serve change, and as the demographics of the community, especially here in DuPage County, changes. And making sure that everyone has that equal access and equal right to justice. Just because somebody does not speak the language does not mean they are not afforded the same respect and the same access to justice as a natural born citizen is. Just because you don't speak English does not mean you can't have your case heard right away, or that you should receive extra punishment, or that I should treat you any differently than anyone else. My goal is to treat everyone respectfully, make sure that there is fairness and equity in my courtroom at all times, regardless of who you are, where you come from, or any other factors. I think being a founding member of the Chicago chapter of the National Asian Pacific Islander Prosecutors Association goes to that. Being the vice chair of the diversity committee with the DuPage County Bar Association goes to that. It's about, I think, a big part, mentoring young attorneys and young students and encouraging them either to join the legal field or to stay in the legal profession. I think the legal community needs to represent the legal field, and the criminal justice system and the judiciary needs to reflect the community it serves. And so I can do my part in that, not only by being here and showing up to work and showing people that there is diversity in the judiciary, but also by promoting additional people to join. I think it's very important to have Asian prosecutors, because there aren't a lot of Asian prosecutors, especially here in Illinois, in DuPage County, or in the Chicagoland area. And I think it's very important to have Asian prosecutors. I think it's important to have Black prosecutors, Latinx prosecutors, prosecutors of a variety of diverse backgrounds. So when it comes to people of those backgrounds coming to court, they see, no, it's not the criminal justice system coming to get me. There are people who look like me. It's going to be fair. They're going to take everything into account. And it can't be just prosecutors. It's got to be everyone involved in the system. Prosecutors, public defenders, private attorneys, judges, probation, police. If the system doesn't reflect the community they serve, how can the community trust in that system? And so promoting diversity by mentoring or leading these organizations is how I want to try to promote and increase diversity. My judicial philosophy is it's the job of the judge to follow the law. There is a reason why there is a separation of powers in the United States. It's the legislature's job to create the laws. It's the executive branch's job to enforce the law. And it's the judiciary's job to make sure the law is being followed. And that, I think, is my number one priority. Now, within the law, we as judges do have discretion. And I think that's where empathy and empathy comes into play. You use that discretion that you have appropriately. And again, that goes hand in hand with diversity in the judiciary. You have to have diversity in order to understand where these people are coming from, so you can exercise empathy within the bounds of the law. So like I said, with the separation of powers, I think while the judiciary can give opinions, I don't think that the judiciary has the right to actually create laws. We can just say whether or not those laws are constitutional, whether or not those laws are in fact legal. And in that way, we can shape public policy. But I do think that it's the elected officials who are in charge of creating that public policy, and the judiciary who is charged with making sure that public policy is legal, comports with the Constitution, and ensure that everyone's rights are protected with those laws. Every day there was always something as a prosecutor, and you have to learn how to think on your feet and resolve the issue in a way that's fair. I mean, there are too many examples to think, but it's always about doing the right and ethical thing. I think a lot of people see the criminal justice system or a prosecutor's job as winning. As a prosecutor, you're supposed to win. I don't think that's true. I think as a prosecutor, your job is to make sure that the right thing, that the fair and just thing happens. And if it's a not guilty or if it's dismissing charges, as long as that's the right thing to do, that is what a prosecutor is bound to do. Now, if someone is guilty of the crime with which they're charged, then absolutely you move forward and you make sure that the right thing is done and that person is convicted. But ultimately, being a prosecutor is making those everyday decisions to ensure the right thing happens. And I think as a judge, it's also your job to referee the parties and make sure that the ultimate resolution is the just, right, and fair resolution in any case you preside over. So I think it's very important for the judiciary to be involved in the community. I think too often people think of judges as up here. We're just regular people and we should be involved in the community. And that goes against access to the judicial system. You don't want to be an unapproachable person. You want to be someone that the public and the community can connect with. Hey, this is a person who's just like me, who's tasked with making sure the right thing happens. And I've been working and getting out in the community more because I understand that as a judge, I am more of a public figure, and working with the local townships, and even, just hanging out with my kids at home, taking them to the park, letting people see that I'm a regular everyday person and that the law or the legal system is not something to be afraid of. It's just regular people who are in it every day, and make them feel more comfortable to engage with the legal system as well. I'm going to speak specifically to criminal law because that's what my history is in. And the Asian communities, the Korean communities, they're very insular. How many times do you hear about a crime being committed against a person in the Korean community, but it doesn't get reported to the police, or they don't want to get police involved? They want to take care of it within the community. And I think that's a result of, again, how many Korean police officers do you know, right? If there aren't a lot of Korean police officers there, or anyone who even speaks the language available to the Korean community, how can the Korean community trust the police if they can't even communicate with the police? Again, with the criminal justice system and prosecutors, if there aren't people who look like you in the prosecutor's office, or someone who speaks your language or you can communicate with, how are you supposed to trust in that system? So I think that getting more representation from the police to the prosecutors, again, to the whole judicial system, is so important to make the Korean community and other diverse communities trust in the system to be able to step forward when things like this happen to them. So I think for the Asian community, it's that having that reflection, seeing yourself in the system, that will allow them to come forward with these crimes. I think that back in COVID, right, when we were seeing a bunch of hate crimes committed against the API population as well, I think that has dwindled, and I think it shows that that has reduced some, but there's still, especially now, a lot of fear surrounding others, right? People who don't look like what a typical American person may look like, people who don't sound like what a typical American person sounds like. That otherness is also a big problem in making sure that the community at large understands America is for everyone. It's not just for, white people or people who speak perfect English. The intent of America, the idea behind America, is to have it be for everyone. And I think that we need to get past racism and make sure that it is in fact for everyone again. So, like I said, I'm the first Korean American circuit judge, not just in DuPage County, but the first one in the state. And I think that's a big step for our community. Not too long after I was appointed, Sunny Choi Williams was appointed as the second Korean American circuit judge in the state. We have Eun Yoon in Kane County, who is an associate judge there. We have Bill Yu in Cook County, who's an associate judge there. It's all about making these little steps. And I hope that my legacy is that even though I'm the first, I'm not, and I'm never the only, right? It's to get a foot in the door to make sure that others who follow behind me have a door open and the opportunity to come up here as well. And it's to continue representation and continue increasing diversity so everyone can feel that they have access to the judicial system. Be afraid to be yourself, right? Don't be afraid to be true to who you are, and don't be afraid to disappoint people. Not in that you want to do things poorly. You never want to do things poorly, but you want to make sure that you show them what you are, who you are with everything you've got. Be true to yourself, because that's the only way you're going to succeed. Other thing is, don't be afraid. You cannot be afraid. You have to take these chances and opportunities for yourself. And especially, I think a lot of young Asian law students or young Asian lawyers, that they want to go into what we call big law, the money-making side of the legal practice, whether it be from family pressures to be a successful lawyer and make lots of money. That's not the only way to be successful. I was a prosecutor, like I said, for over 15 years. I made not a lot of money. Prosecutors are public servants. They don't make a lot of money. And you can't be afraid to follow your passions and do what you love, because that's how you're going to be successful by your own standards. Don't let society's standards dictate what is best for you, because I followed my heart, I followed my passions, and that's allowed me to get to where I am now. It's got to be this. And I say that not because I'm discounting everything that I did as a prosecutor, because I did a lot as a prosecutor. I tried and convicted murderers and rapists and, domestic batterers. I did all of that. And I think that was all building up to this and allowing me to represent the community, both the Korean community and my local community here in DuPage County. And knowing that a daughter of immigrants has been able to do this it's been fantastic. It's been such a great opportunity. So I have 2 kids, so there's not a lot of time for personal passions. My family is my priority outside of work. My family is my priority, period. And it's hard maintaining that work-life balance, being a mom and being a prosecutor, being a mom and being a judge. It's hard to balance that, but you have to prioritize what's important in your life. You have to make space for all of the important people and things in your life. And so really, it's my kids, it's my husband, it's my family and friends. They're what keep me balanced, because sometimes work can get overwhelming. There can be a lot of stress, especially being a sex crimes prosecutor, which is what I did for a few years. But keeping in mind what's important to you and why you're doing the job that you do. I think that's the best way to keep that work-life balance and to keep from losing it in such a stressful situation. I don't think there's been one person, right? I think I have been lucky to work with a lot of fantastic people throughout my career. And when you work with so many great people, you pick little things from each of them, right? Oh, I like the way this person does this, or I like the way this person does this. And you take it all inside yourself and say, how can I reflect those good qualities that I've seen in other people? How can I apply that to my own life and better myself in that way? So I have been in front of a lot of great, very intelligent judges. I have been partnered with some passionate advocates, and even in my personal life, I have amazing family and friends, and I've learned something from each of them. It's not just one person who's been the most impactful. It's the combination of all of their influences that have gotten me to where I am and helped me become who I am. Like I said earlier, my parents each emigrated from Korea to Georgia with their own families when they were in high school. So they came pretty young. They happened to move to the same small town in the south suburbs of Atlanta. And my dad was actually in the same high school class as my imobu, my mom's oldest brother. And they met in high school. They didn't get married until later. And then they had my sister and I. My sister and I are just a year apart. And we grew up in a very traditionally Korean way, I think. For a long time, we lived with my 할머니 and 할아버지. My mom and dad had sektaksos in Georgia, and we grew up in the back of the sektakso, right? I mean, that's just what we did every Saturday. And when I was growing up, there weren't a lot of Koreans where we grew up in Georgia. Georgia now, there are so many Korean people there. It's amazing, the explosion of the Korean population in Georgia. But when we were growing up there weren't that many. So when I went to school for the first time, when I went and got dropped off at school when I was 5, I didn't speak any English. I only spoke Korean because my 할머니 raised my sister and I. And my 할머니 still doesn't speak English, even though she's been here for 50 years. And so we learned English really quick. You have to. And then when I grew up and when I was 13, we moved to New Jersey, in the suburbs of New York City. And it was a huge change because my high school in New Jersey was 30% Korean, not 30% Asian, 30% Korean. So I went from this middle school that was mostly black and white. And then there was me and my sister, 2 Koreans, to a school that was 30% Korean. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do with this. And it kind of helped return me to my Korean roots. I was in, I think, 8th grade, HOT came to perform in Palisades Park, New Jersey. And that was kind of my first real introduction to Korean culture. And I'm not talking about like the trot videos that my 할머니 would watch or the 뽀뽀뽀, Korean kids programming that I would watch when I was 3 or 4 years old. Like as an as a teenager, going to the HOT concert with my Korean friends kind of reintroduced me to the Korean culture. And like I said, that was a big change from what I had experienced before. Now, there isn't a huge Korean population in DuPage County. There are Koreans, but it's not the same as in like Glenview or Morton Grove or Niles, where it's more concentrated. It's a little more spread out here in the western suburbs. And trying to raise my daughters, they're half Korean, half white, and trying to raise them with an appreciation for Korean culture, it's a little different. Korean culture is so popular right now between K-dramas and K-pop and the K-wave with K-beauty and everything. It's very different. So that's starting to get them interested. Making sure they learn how to eat kimchi without having to wash it off and, introducing them to like doenjang and other Korean foods that aren't as popular. That's been an interesting challenge, I think. But my Korean culture has definitely affected and influenced who I am as a person. And I think that especially the idea that you work hard and you do your best in whatever it is that you want to do, don't disappoint your parents and make sure not to, bring shame upon your family. That has been a big influence. Work hard and be the best. And I've tried to do that throughout my career. I believe that diversity is so important in the judicial system and that the judicial system should reflect the community it serves. I hope that you will continue to support myself and other diverse candidates as we try to make the courts more accessible and fair for everyone.